Welcome to the Digital Leadership Podcast. So it's the second episode of a Digital Leadership Decoded podcast, where we offer a deep dive into the intricacies of leading into the digital realm. I need to change that word because I can't say it. So guys, welcome. Thank you for participating in the second episode. Can you tell me a bit about yourself and let know our listener who you are?
Sure. And first, thank you for inviting me to the second episode. I feel very special to be part of the first three. And I always enjoy getting a soapbox. So thank you for giving me a soapbox as well. So for everybody, my name is Cax. You pronounce it as the same as fax, tax, wax, just for the people who are having trouble pronouncing it. I'm originally from Philippines and I moved to Barcelona 8 years ago. And currently, I work as a head of product for one of the many tribes in a marketplace company based here in Europe. And that is my day job. After work, I also mentor and coach women in product. So I teach in an academy called All Women here in Barcelona, where we teach product management, UX, data science, etc. And I also offer one-on-one private coaching to women in product out there for actually product leadership.
That's good. That's good. I was looking that we are live, and I'm seeing that my camera is really bad. So I hope it's gonna get better with time. And so that's your role. So you were saying that you're also coaching women. You have your role also at the head of product. So what brought you to those two things?
So let's start with how I got into leadership myself first. And it's actually, I got into leadership the same way that I got into product management, completely accidentally. But this time around, there's a little bit of strategy that fell into it as well. So I say accidentally because when I got into the role, I was not really actively pursuing a leadership slash people management role. I was an IC, individual contributor. I always thought I would be an individual contributor for the rest of my product management life because I do like working in my own corner, building my product, working with the engineers, and doing more and more complex things with my team, with my product team. And I was pretty good at it. So for the longest time, it was really what I was optimizing for. But in a certain moment in our organization, a lot of things has changed. People have left, and roles, managerial leadership roles above me, immediately above me, were suddenly vacated. So there was a call to step up. I did. And to be completely transparent, when I did step up, I had zero idea what it meant to take up a leadership mantle. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. We'll figure it out. So that's the accidental part. The strategic part to it, it was not just the role randomly landed in my lap by a miracle. I mean, experience wise, I have been working in the domain that my tribe is in charge of for a long time now. So I do have expertise in the topic. I have been working in the organization for a while as well, so I do have pretty strong stakeholder relationship in our organization, which makes me very visible to the different business areas in the company. So I have built a positive association between myself, the domain, and the function. So that helps in the strategic part. And also, as I mentioned, do have I have built my, let's say, mentoring coaching toolkit through the teaching outside of work. So all of these things combined kind of made it make sense to step up in the and take up the leadership mantle, at least in the most basic way possible. So that's the how I got myself into the role. How I got myself into the teaching, actually outside of work, was a matter of frustration. So I mean, we talked about this a lot before about there's so much dogmatism recently about this is how you do product management. And it's in a box, a template, a set of rules, and then you try to apply those rules. It doesn't work in your context. So that was one frustration. So I got into teaching and mentoring and coaching because I was suddenly finding myself in front of a lot of people, sometimes myself included, frustrated that what they were trying to do did not work for their context. So talking it out, trying to support these product people, specifically the women, um, was a driver for this
Mm-hmm.
experience. On the other hand, there was also the frustration for my own career. Like at some point in 2019, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? How do I save the world? And what is my purpose? And all of that questioning of my existence. So I took up teaching and coaching, and I was like, this feels good. I'm going to keep continuing with this until it doesn't feel good anymore. And so far, a couple of years in, it still feels good.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And so, what were because you said like I wanted to save the world. I like what I'm doing with my life. Uh, what was the thing that I think we have the best question from following us, which is good. Frustrated, triggered. So he's also like noticing that. What was the thing that were frustrating you the most in there, and why did you want to save the world? I will say.
Um, okay, wow, this is gonna go back a couple of years. So in 2019, many years ago, there was a situation in my career wherein I found out that um, I was not in the same level as my peers.
Okay.
So my peers were higher than me. Their salaries were higher than what I had, and we all had the same scope, we all had the same responsibility, we all had the same impact. So there was no way that I was below them, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
um However, there was not really an easy change I could do when it came to the job because I was tied with a visa, immigrant issues. So
Yeah.
I didn't do anything in that case. So there was this feeling of a lack of control with what was happening, and there was also the feeling of I wasn't good enough. So even if I justified it as this could be a fluke, a leveling mistake, an administration problem, not a me problem, it did still had its impact in my confidence, in my worth, in my everything. And I was feeling sorry for myself up until a certain point, until I cannot keep feeling sorry for myself. I needed to do something. The immediate solutions that I wanted were not available at hand. So let me go down another path. And I really needed at that point first to feel good. I needed
Mm-hmm.
to feel confident about what I had to offer. And teaching offered that opportunity. So it helped me synthesize what I actually learned. It helped validate that I actually knew what I was doing, even though my circumstances were making me feel that they were not. And then what happened after the additional impact of helping more women get into product management, or helping more women level up and solve their own problems, became an added value that also validated that, hey, I do have a purpose, I am good, um, I do have merit that I can go back to with my problem and see if I can tackle it a different way instead of feeling sorry about myself. So kind of meshed circumstances there.
Kind of also circumstances. We have so we don't see his name there, but we have Aguilash on LinkedIn that's saying Steve Jobs had the exact same definition of for good managers, the one who take up without being asked to. So which is your story. You didn't ask for it, but you just took it. So it's going with that.
Well,
And
technically, I was asked in the sense of, hey, can you do an interim band aid situation? You're like, sure, okay, let's do it.
So yeah, you were a bit asked, but you still took it. And so, what is before we dive down, because I really want to dive down on you being like you trying to help also other people than just yourself. But before we dive down into that, what is digital leadership for you?
The tough question already, in 10 minutes into the conversation.
Exactly. Always.
So I think in this case, digital for me is a context of the environment that we are operating in. We have the constraints of our products, or the work that we do, the results that we have. They're not physical. We work very differently. In some cases, it's hybrid, it's fully remote, etc. So digital context constraints. Leadership, on the other hand, is, well, the role, the responsibility, the accountability that operates in that context. Personally, for me, leadership has always been about um, going towards a direction, a good direction, and making sure that the people that I work with, that I'm leading, feel empowered,
Hmm.
that they have the means necessary to be successful, that they are given the environment to feel safe and hold true to their own values, because that's also very important to me, and that they are allowed, not allowed, but they feel safe to play as well and do the work that that they want to do within the constraints of course, the objective, the goal that we have. I mean, at the end, it's still a job. There is a job factor to it. So the objective of the job is very, very important, and to bring the people towards that objective, very, very important. But there's the aspect of the people as well. That's for me equally important, and may or may not be in the job description.
Okay. And what do you find? What did you see that in your role as leading? What did you feel was the hardest part?
Okay. So I'm a very practical person. I mean, my foundations have been the foundations of an individual contributor. You have a problem space, you build a solution for that provides value to users and to the company. You do what needs to be done to make that happen. But then, as soon as I stepped into the leadership part of it, it's it's suddenly people that I have to um, think of, and not in the sense of people like as in when I was working with my engineering counterparts, because we're a team, or with my stakeholders, but people in the complexity of their feelings, their fears, their careers, giving them the constraints that they need, that they may or may not accept or be happy with. For me, that's the complex part. So for example, first few months into my leadership life, I was faced with multiple challenges, and the big one the big one was we just finished a big merger with another
Hmm.
company, and mergers meant duplication of products.
Okay.
So, from a practical point of view, deduplication of products can be straightforward ish. You have a framework to decide, you follow that framework. From a people point of view, though, it was not. Of course, people were hesitant to act on it. It could mean so many things. There could be implications on their jobs, the roles. And now, in hindsight, I can understand why, because from one day to another, they were suddenly being asked to get rid of one of your products.
Yeah.
And that is not a practical approach. That is not an operational practical lens I can tackle. That is not something I can tackle with just a practical and operational lens. So I had to learn how to look at the more people side of things. And then you add to the complexity of, I'm a big people pleaser. That is my number one challenge. When I started hearing feedback from my team that was a bit more personal, like, hey, I don't feel like I belong. they are doing things wrong compared to me. This is horrible. I mean, my tendency was fix everything for my team myself. Let me tackle this problem. Let me fix this for you.
You want to save everyone. You want to save everyone.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, that was a problem in the sense like it was not sustainable. One. Two, I didn't have the solution. I didn't know actually how to solve this for them. Three, because everybody had the same problem in different contexts, I was actually sending conflicting messages. So imagine two conflicting people, and I was giving feedback to person A,
Mhm.
what the problem with person B. And then I was also giving feedback to person B, what the problem with person A. Like that feedback was just completely a mess in the end. So I was not helping them in that sense. So trying to go against my own tendencies and really learning how to empower people to solve their own problems, find their own tools. That was challenge number two. And like I said, this is all within the realm of people.
Okay. And so we have a question from our one and only Trigger Techies, Adam. How do you balance between empowering your direct report versus solving certain problems for them? So you said you wanted to save them. So it's quite an interesting question because here you said, you empathize with them, they have problems, they feel like they don't belong, or with conflicts also. How do you balance that?
Um, I don't. I don't aim to balance. So for me it's really different from person to person. So some people will have different skills. They will have different capacities. They will have different experiences. So for me, I take it individually. And if a person has the capacity to solve their problem for themselves, then
Mm-hmm.
I try to push as much as I can. But I also am very aware of the level of frustration. If they've tried a lot and they're still frustrated and the problem still exists, then I try to be more hands-on. Like I'm not gonna teach them how to swim while they're already drowning. So I think
That's good. That's a good one. I like this one.
so there's that reality check all the time. But my tendency now is to try to see if I can get them to solve it first, even though my natural instincts is to solve it for them. So it's also a way to help myself not be such a people pleaser all the time, but
Mhm.
pay attention to their levels of frustration and capacity. And if there is really no way for them to solve it themselves, then I help them also hold their hand and solve it, but I don't solve it for them either, so they also learn at the same time.
Okay. And and if we come back a little bit to what you're doing now with other people, how does it relate between the two? So what I mean by that is that you do also coaching. You have also like women in their leadership role. How do you transpose what you learned from your career to doing that outside work also?
I think for the coaching part, a couple of things that I've really learned is to, one, listen, and really really listen to people, because sometimes it's very easy to jump into advices, or especially if they're outside of your context. And there's um there's also the knowledge there that you know how to solve it, so it's very tempting. But first, skill learned from my own leadership and management experience, listen. So that's one thing. The other thing is that to bring different perspectives. So it helps that I have had my own experience with my team of 12 and my different peers in our big organization, and also with my network. So it helps to also remember for myself that there are so many different perspectives in this world. So to ask them question, to help them see a different view, that is super helpful in my coaching. But the third one is actually to help these women be kind to themselves. I mean, the role of product manager is complex enough. Double that complexity when you transition to a more senior or leadership role. So I speak with these women who expect to be good and perfect on day one. Like how is that even physically possible? So to give them also the lens of like be kind, learn in this experience, and also it's actually a good thing when you don't know because that means there's space to grow, but also there's a space to experiment. So I think that's the third thing I'm bringing into my coaching as well.
Oh, it's interesting. And so like we have another question that I think like goes quite well here. What is the number one trigger point for your students? So like you said, they have to be kind for themselves, and they maybe try to be, I don't know, maybe perfect, or they expect something. So what is the trigger point or pain point for them?
So it depends on spoken like a true product person. It depends. Because
It
I don't
depends.
think there's a
Is
number
the
one.
answer of all product managers that are experienced.
Let me be safe in that. But the thing is that there is no number one because they all have very different problems to solve. But I think it depends on where they are at in their careers. So for example, um, for the more junior ones who want to either land a new job or get promoted, there's the struggle with, do I know enough? Do I have experience in this? Which is actually verbatim, I don't have experience in this. I don't know enough. That's why there's the hesitation to take the leap and apply or ask for a promotion or try out a new experience. So that's one. And then when it comes to the people who are now trying out first time their leadership hats, a lot of it is, I would say, internal pain points like boundaries between themselves and their work, because now it's a lot of things. It's not just about your product that you're managing the careers of your team, your team's budget, etc. And it's very easy to just go all in and forget that you need to have a life after, or it's okay if you don't finish this and you can come back to it tomorrow. So setting that boundaries. There's also another around self-limiting beliefs. So people who are like me, people pleasers. So though are very uncomfortable with conflict between themselves and their newly found stakeholders that they're still building relationships with, or conflict between themselves and their team. Like, how do you become more demanding? How do you ask for more from your team? What's the standard that you want to set? Like those things are new challenges that are pretty hard to deal with when your self-limiting beliefs are around, I need to make people happy.
Mhm. And do you think there is something from the market, but it's because it's something that I see also in the training I have, like generally they come because they lack confidence, they want to have more influence, they want to be heard, or they want to they want to succeed also talking to their team, to be able to influence them in a certain way. Do you feel like there is something coming from the market or the profession in general that is like pushing people to believe that the role should be a certain way, when in reality it depends, I will say?
That's a good question. What do you think? I'm gonna
I
bring
think
it back while I think of my answer.
I think on my side there is. I think when you read the books, about what should be product management, sometimes you're like, this is not my reality. Like as you said, people, it's really hard for people because depending on their past, depending on what they're trying to do, depending on what is happening in their company, depending on a lot of things, it can be really hard for people. Also, I have mentored also, women in the role, and the product world is still really man oriented, and so it's also hard also from the expectation from this side. So that's at least like my two. But you have more experience than me on leading, women and being in the role. So it's something I don't understand. So this is why I ask you this side.
Oh, to be honest, I'm still stewing in this question. I think it surely doesn't help that the role is uncertainty turned into a job. The role is to make to give clarity in the midst of uncertainty, to give order in the midst of chaos, and to bring people together with opposing opinions of what is the most important thing in the world to do. So the role for me is uncertainty turned into a job. And when you're up to your eyeballs with uncertainty all the time, it can be easy to lose sight of what do you already know. What
Mm-hmm.
can we use? What are your strengths? Um, what are the things that you can repeat over and over and over again? Because suddenly everything is a new challenge. But it's really important to take a step back and realize this is not actually a new challenge. It's just the same challenge with a different context, whether it's a different problem, a different target market, a different product team that you're working with. But the goal will always be the same, right? It's about providing value to the users so that you can capture value back as a company. That will always be the end all be all of the goal. Like the how to get there is the uncertainty part.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that part is not helping, but I think we can always instead of focusing too much on the house, I think it's really important now to remind people, and this is what I do with my students and with my mentees and my coaches, that like this is the role. What are the options to get there? And then suddenly they find that they actually have options. So it's about surfacing and empowering people that they actually have the toolkit. They just need to learn how to use and reuse them. And if none of them work, then maybe it's time to upskill, retrain, find a different perspective. But don't jump into the default of, oh shit, I don't know what to do. Because then you're going to be saying that every freaking day.
Yeah,
It's
it's. But I like your definition when you said like the role is uncertainty turned into a job, and it takes a certain type of profile to be at ease with that. I think I was posting yesterday about being comfortable also with that, and I think I saw this morning also a tweet from Andrea that was saying, like she didn't want to make assumption or clear, about templates to use and all that, because the role is always different depending on the company, and I really like resonated with that. So I totally get what you say, and it's really hard for most of the people. And
And it's also a good thing, like profile wise, that there's what the fun part about being a product manager is you can actually come from very different backgrounds. You can
yeah,
come from events management and be a product manager, and be an engineer and be a product manager, because any skill experience you have, you can shape it into a product manager profile. Of course, there's skills ABC that need to be learned along the way, but it's such a rich job, and anybody can do it well, but then you can also fail it very easily. That's why I don't also think it's a good job for people who are just fresh off college or university. Like you need
yeah,
to have your muscles trained already one way or another.
you need to know yourself a little bit before jumping into this role, because otherwise it's gonna be strenuous on you. It's gonna be
Exactly. We should put this in the job description. Requirement: resilience.
you
That should
require resilience. Did you train your resilience, like 3 years of resilience training or something like that? That will be good. Which is perfect what you said, because we have a question from Anand. So by the way, like people are watching us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm trying to see like where the questions are, because sometimes I'm a bit lost in that. So how do you approach a new job or a profile taker on? Where to start to establish a baseline for yourself in understanding the team and all the stakeholders? So it's quite interesting that you were talking about the role and jumping on the role that is different. Which brings us to this question.
Oof, tough. Um,
The
I
first
haven't.
part. So how do you approach a new job? Let's just
So
take.
let me do this in the lens of how I onboard my team, because
Yeah.
it's been a while since I started in a new company. But at least the process that I take with my team when they're onboarding in a new role, so somebody who came in or transferring teams, like I have a 30, 60, 90 day plan, wherein in those 90 days, the job is to be curious. So understand what the product is, who the users are, what are the main insights that we have been operating on, why do we operate the way that we operate, etc., etc., and also know the organization. So this is really the time to build relationships, build your information database, not to make any decisions, because that is for me something that you will get to eventually, but it's also a very important step that's usually forgotten in the rush to provide value. But how are you going to provide value if you have very little understanding of what's going on around you? And
Mhm.
another reason for why I put a specific point in get to know your stakeholders, understand their ways of working, their context, etc., because at least in the context that my team is operating in, we have a very intricate relationship with our stakeholders. We have a lot of dependency between each other. So for me, that is also trust building season, or trust building 90 days, because it's going to be a hard thing for somebody suddenly saying to your stakeholders, hey, I need you to do this, or hey, no, I'm not going to prioritize that, if they don't trust you.
Yeah.
So for me, that is, if you're new to the job, if you're new to the role, if you're new to the team, get curious, build your relationships, build trust, not just within your team, but also actually with your stakeholders. And sometimes this is the cheese. I'm sorry if you're hearing sirens in the
Yeah,
streets of
you're in Barcelona. People are used to it.
Barcelona. So this is the cheesy part of it. What the mindset that I try to ask my team to have, and sometimes it's hard, but in the end, their stakeholders are part of the organization. So in many ways, their stakeholders are their team as well. Maybe they're just sitting in different offices, speak a different language, but the moment that we shift the mindset of team from stakeholder, it also releases a lot of internal baggage of how how are you supposed to relate to them, and suddenly their problems are as important as yours.
So first, build trust. This is what you need to do. Get to know the job. That's the second thing.
Build an information database.
Information database. What is this?
I don't know. It sounded nice when you said build, and then I just wanted to have parallelism. But it's for me, it's get to know your product, know your market, know all of the insights that are in between, know the ways of working of your team and the organization. So these are all pieces of information. So you have it in your brain or in your doc wiki. It's an information database.
And so how? And see, if we go to the second question, because you were saying, we were starting to talk about stakeholders and what you should do, when you approach a new job. But the second part of this question is establishing, your baseline for yourself in understanding the team and the stakeholders. So if you have a new team or the stakeholders, how do you build this information? I will say, or do you have any tools, or do you have any tips?
Wow. Um, this is making me dig on my personal experience. I mean, the baseline is easy. It's zero. I know nothing about them. I know nothing about the product. They know nothing about me. Um, I think from a understanding the people point of view, it's going from zero, wherein you don't know anything about them, to what happens 3 months from now. Am I able to give them feedback? Am I able to receive feedback from them, if we can go to an after work beer after, if that's your kind of thing. So I think there is no 0 to 1 in a relationship. There will always be levels to it. But from a working perspective point of view, if you can have conversations, if you can accept their feedback with objectivity and vice versa, and you can probably have difficult conversations 6 months later. I mean, it's more of a moving goalpost in this case, and I think this goes both ways for team and stakeholders.
Do you have a story for us where it was useful that you created with relationship?
So
Or maybe a bad story where you didn't create this relationship. That's also interesting.
so I actually wrote about it in my newsletter the other day, because there was this one time, I was product manager for a ratings product, and I have four different stakeholder teams, and you can tell the difference between when I trust them and they trust me and when they don't,
Okay.
because at least the difference was if I said no, we can't do this, we cannot prioritize this right now, it's not even a full stop no, one team would be okay, we understand, when can we do this, what do you think can happen, etc., etc., what's our option B, and then it's a conversation. Other team is escalations, dishonor on you, your family, and your cow, what's wrong with you. So that's one. And then there's also the other way around, if I need something from them. So team trust would be, sure, but let's do it this way, we have to talk about it, etc., and again, it's a conversation. Team no trust, it's like no, moves on and walks away, figuratively speaking. So you can tell immediately if some relationships are just not there in terms of trust and when it's not. But yeah, and I remember having this conversation with my manager, and um pretty early into the relationship with team trust and team no trust, and I was like, hey, maybe I need to take on negotiation skills or negotiation classes, etc. Or when I was nearing my frustration level, like they're just so difficult to work with. It's their fault, not mine. And then my manager actually had to coach me and say, look, what's the difference between the two? And that's when it hit me like, okay, it's trust. There's a relationship and there is none.
And did you succeed in building that trust?
I would like to think so. I mean, took a while, and a lot of work, effort to, I mean, sometimes bring the conversation to not about work, or make the effort to give them kudos for things that probably like, that's supposed to be something that we did together, but you said no to me. So there were a lot of things that I had to take action on. Otherwise, if I wait for them to build the trust, maybe they have zero interest, then it's not gonna happen. So, but yeah, I mean, it helped, but I don't think we ever got to the level of the trust I had with team trust. And I guess it's still I would still say it's a work in progress.
And so you were saying that you're mainly an introvert, right?
A functional introvert.
Functional introvert. How did it work for you? Like the fact that you had to go out there and you had to do it.
It's hard. I mean, it's a lot of people. I mean, product management in general is just people on a daily basis. So sometimes I would find myself, even until today, by Friday, I'm done. I cannot people anymore because I know by Monday I will have to people again. So, but this is why I say I'm functional. So I can power through. It's really just a lack of energy at the end of it. But the goal of building relationships, that this is part of the role. I mean, there's no choice to it, so I will do it. But at the same time, it does help as well bring in the energy when it's needed. But Friday, dead. Monday, barely functional. Tuesday, then I'm back to myself again.
And so how do you power through? What is your secret? Just because people must feel exactly the same thing as you.
So for me, it was really about knowing how I recharge. So luckily, I work from home. And in between meetings, especially when I have back to back ones, I try to block times for myself. So at least have time for coffee, have time to go to my plants and just look at them and not talk to anybody for 5 minutes. I also try to do more activities for myself by myself in the weekend. So if my partner is gonna go out and have some drinks with friends, then I'm gonna take advantage of that and stay home and be by myself for the rest of the evening. So it's gonna be part of the job, but it's very important to make space and time and space for the things that will recharge. So otherwise, if you ignore these things, you're gonna be depleted day after day after day.
Yeah. And so now we are. I asked you the question because we hear a lot about what is product management, and I wanted to go in that route because you're not the only introvert that I know that is a product manager, and it's quite interesting to have this point of view about the fact that it's about people and how people go through that. And it goes well with another question that we had from Akhilesh, which is about managing your team and more around a problem that you can have with your team, which is how to deal with procrastinator in your team. So here we're in the conflicts with your team. How do you first of all, what do you think about I have two separate questions in there. So there is how to deal with procrastinator, but I want to just go in the end. What do you think about this influence without?
I don't necessarily believe it because
Okay.
maybe it's a definition. Like, words are powerful, right? So authority is always associated with level, power, title. But I think authority can also be gained with expertise. Really weird obsession with fish, and maybe that's very related to your job. So I think we all have authority one way or another. So that is a tool to use as influence as well. And besides, if you're just using as well your title to influence people, that's called a power trip. It's not influence. So
I like that.
um,
I
I
like that.
think
It's a power trip is not influence. I quite like
I
it.
mean that's the most practical and easy way to go about it, but then that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, I think we all have influence in one way or another, and these are things that are important to utilize when influencing. But I also believe that because when we say influence without authority, it's very inward looking. I feel like I need you to do something. Versus I always like to think about influence as a two-way direction. Yes, I need you to do something because it's important, but at the end, this is gonna cost you something. So I really also need to be aware of what's in it for you or what it might cost you. Because if we're both clear and I'm clear what's in it for you, what are you going to gain? That's going to be part of our conversation. And then we can have a negotiation. Otherwise, if there is nothing in it for the person, there is no influence there. You're going to have a very, very hard time to get a yes out of them. So I think when you're trying to influence somebody, that's the first step. Is there something for this person or is just a cost? If there's nothing for them to gain, maybe you need to go another route of trying to get what you want. And then there's authority. Like, authority, what are you bringing to the table? What's your expertise? Why are you a credible person to believe that there's something to be gained about whatever it is that you're asking for? So it's a very big thing to unpack, and it's not just related to titles. This is what I believe, at least.
But it's something that you see also with your coaching, right?
Yeah, I mean, let me put on one hand, for example, when I stepped into the coaching realm, I was a newbie, but I wanted, of course, to influence my target market to buy my service. So how I was gonna do that? well, there my authority was probably not in the same level as more experienced coaching, but my authority was in my experience, what I have been doing, what were the things that I have been through, and my influence was, well, because I've been through this full of shit. This is how I can help you, and this is what you have to gain. So that's one example. And of course, in the work that we're doing, this is also the kind of influence that we try to work on. And
And
to the question of procrastinators,
so yes, the second part, which can be also a question about, I take a question about procrastinator, obviously, but also how do you deal with conflict also? So, like I want to extend a bit of a question, because here I think it's the full question about influence, like what people say, influence without authority, or at least like directing people without managing them. How do you deal with that? So how do you deal if people, don't do the work that is expected? You feel like it's procrastination, so you feel like it's not going, um, you know, as fast as you expected, or you feel that maybe people are hiding something. How do you deal with all that? How do you deal with this kind of conflictual part? Because there is a lot of question about that, whether it's on Reddit, on Twitter, on how to deal with people. So
yeah, because my thought around procrastinators was like, does it matter? I mean, does it matter if they're delayed as long as they're delivering? But I like the expansion that you did. That maybe it's really about the conflict. Um, so I think it's very personal in the sense of we all have our different styles. We all have our different ways of setting standards, communicating those standards with the team. My biggest struggle actually in the beginning was not just that I'm a people pleaser, but I'm a conflict avoider. Like I try to avoid giving the hardest feedback until the very last moment, until I have to. And it was short-term gain of delaying the pain, and then realizing that I just made it worse by waiting and making that problem bigger.
mhm.
So
So
what
that's
worked
interesting. You said that's it. Sorry, I cut you there, but that's interesting. You say like by waiting, you created the bigger problem.
because probably the impact has been bigger, like the delays of or the delays of the delivery of a particular work. When it was a 1 week delay, maybe it was fine, but because I didn't say anything and just let them be delayed and hold on to their promise that it's not going to take longer, and now it's a 2 month delay, we're talking about a huge impact here now. So not that I only have the team to give feedback to, conflict with the team to work with, I now also have conflict with probably a big part of the organization to manage at the same time. So it gets worse. Avoiding the problem or avoiding the conflict is never the solution. So I learned that the hard way. So for me, at least the style that I developed was, before it even becomes a conflict, give feedback already. So um, the framework that I follow for giving feedback that works for me and helps me be more comfortable with giving negative feedback or constructive feedback has always been, one, focus on a single problem at hand. Like, don't give general, hey, you're lazy, but this is a fact. We said that we will deliver by X. Now it's X plus one. That nobody can contest. And then communicate how I feel about it. What are my fears about this situation? And then open it up for a solution. What can we do about it? Because in this way, then it's free of judgment. It's free of finger pointing as well. And then the third part is that it's action oriented. Immediately bring in the solution and bring them as part of the solution instead of me again just telling them what to do. Because there's also the other part of, if I'm just constantly telling people what to do and they don't agree with it, they're not going to do it. So I think it's really important to set a goal. What are the our constraints that we need to follow? Whether that's a deadline, whether that's the capacity, whether it's a particular area of focus that we need to just prioritize one way or another, those are constraints that the team can work with, and then give them the space to do it. Because on the other hand, what is procrastination? What is delay? Is it really just my feeling, or is there really a strong boundary that everybody is clear on and understands in the first place? So yeah, I mean, I try to be proactive about conflict, in the sense of I try to avoid it now by giving feedback early, doing the giving using the framework that I use that makes me feel comfortable as well, and putting some guardrails or constraints in the very beginning, so we also have something to anchor on. Otherwise, everything is an opinion and a feeling, and everybody will have violent reactions to that one way or another.
Yeah, I think you said something interesting, which is like use a framework that works for you. It's finding also that framework that allow you to go into conflict between brackets, because it's not really a conflict, as you said, is how you feel, what is the situation, how you feel about it, and what can you do about it. Is it really like, am I really looking at the situation the way I should look at it, or is it something I misunderstand, which is also a possibility. So you're
Yeah.
kind of approaching it that way. So it's not about, basically you're not approaching it, it's the other person's fault. You're not approaching it like that. You're not going into a vendetta. You're going it your way based on you, not the other person.
Yeah, because I also like to think that part of our roles as leaders is training the next generation of leaders. So, one, giving them the space to play, to experiment, to fail, and to figure out what's really working for them is important. So they can find their own style later on. But part of it is also holding them to a standard. But if that standard is, a standard that you hold just in your heart and nobody knows about it, then that standard does not exist. It's not real, because nobody has agreed to it. Nobody said they will try to work towards it. So this is part of it, part of that leadership role, and part of that training the next generation of leaders.
Yeah, so you inspired Enant. That's an interesting point. I consider myself also conflict averse, and it is important to be specific. So that's good. You see, like you, but also it's not just that. Akhilesh said Cax redefined the word authority by attributing to the expertise the person has, which gives me a new perspective. We
I
still have
think.
a question from Anne and Bo that says, "Don't you think authority comes with one responsibility, two trust, and three ability?
Oh yeah, I mean,
What is the
authority.
most important for you? You think? Is it just because you said a lot about trust, obviously, but you said also a lot about skills and for example, being really knowledgeable about a topic that, for example, your company is in. Um, so what is the most important for you in there? If you had to classify, like if you said like the three of them, like what will it be?
I'm gonna cheat and say accountability.
Sorry?
I'm gonna cheat and say accountability because it's kind of a mishmash of all three. But what do you do with that authority? I think is the most important question. Are you just gonna use it for your self gain, for whatever it is, get whatever it is that you want? Like I said, without thinking of the cost for the other people or what's in it for them. Because if there's no benefit, but you can use that authority to get what you want, then that's selfish. And that has impact one way or another, probably by creating a culture for everybody that they don't feel safe, they don't feel heard, and that will have repercussions. So this is why I also think that it's accountable, or not careful. We need to be mindful of how, where we use this authority, and for what purpose. Because if it's just for self gain, then this is not leadership. This is government.
So we're reaching the end. We are having like quite some questions. That's good. We're feeling like we're going through it, which I like. So you talked about legacy. So it's a good question to ask you that. So what do you hope will be your legacy or lasting impact in digital leadership and product management?
I'm a very simple person. So I don't aspire to have lasting impact in the whole product community. Just with the people that I've touched, I've worked with, one way or another. And my hope is that when people think of me, when people remember me, they remember me as somebody who has given them space to to be safe, to give feedback, to play, to enjoy their roles, to explore the possibilities of their career, who has made them feel important, meaning that they've been listened to, that their concerns were taken seriously. And the third one is that somebody who has helped them feel good about their skills, their expertise, and whatever gap they still need to learn. That these are all just the gaps are just normal part of the journey and not a deficiency.
That's good. I like that. I like the focusing on the person around you and not trying to change the world.
I mean,
Uh,
maybe today I still can, but in today,
you're
obviously,
changing it right now. You change two persons' perspective. So that's a start. One person at a time. Any leaders that you follow or book you recommend for new leaders that will help them?
so I'm gonna go and recommend not the usual tech leadership books because probably everybody and their cousin has recommended those. But I would recommend books by leaders outside of the industry. So my favorite one to recommend is Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. That's one. The other is the movie Chef, actually Jean Favreau,
Okay.
and Hillary Clinton's memoir of the election that she lost. So I'm a big fan of diverse perspectives. These people are leaders one way or another in the environment that they operated in the kitchen, in the White House, whatever. And I think we have a tendency to live in a bubble wherein we repeat the same things, we repeat the same philosophies, and then we fall into a trap of doing the same mistakes over and over again. So I think it's um, also too much focused on results in business, which is important. It's already part of our job description. That's why I like to look at the different industries and the different kinds of leadership as well, because it still looks at the job as a very important thing, but it also brings in different factors to it, like our impact on people,
Mm-hmm.
our impact in the industry.
Yeah.
And that at any given time, we will fail because that is part of the job, it's part of the growth. But what you do with it afterwards is what's important. So just because also they're nice books, it's also pretty good
No, like
story.
I like also that you shared a movie. You gave me more to share on this question. I like the movie also or TV shows. It's a good way. I guess you answered a little bit that last question, but for emerging leaders or people that gonna have like a leadership position, what is in the digital or your product or whatever field? What's one piece of advice you wish you'd receive earlier in your career?
So I did receive it mid into my career. I wish I did earlier, and it was something that was actually was shared by Tosin as well in Twitter today. So I'm glad there's another person who feels the same way. We are not heart surgeons. We will make mistakes, and none of them will be catastrophic. Nobody will die. Unless you're building a health tech product, don't listen to me. So there's an exception to this. But most of the time, day to day, we're gonna fail. We're gonna make the wrong decision. And it's very easy to either be afraid to make that decision. I know I deal with that problem all the time, or overthink afterwards when you realize that you've made a mistake and think that the whole world is gonna crash around you. But the probably what's going to happen is that 2 days later people have forgotten about it because somebody has made a bigger mistake. So I think in this case, be brave, take risks. It's okay if you make mistakes, you're supposed to. That's the whole beauty of the product management life. We're encouraged to make mistakes so we can learn and iterate. It's the same with everything else, with leadership, with your career, etc. So embrace that principle.
That's great. I like that. So we have a Claire that says, thanks a lot, Phil, for the really informative session. The answers that Cax provided give me an insight into our moral framework.
Oh,
Moral framework. That's really interesting. You should write about the moral framework. And Alan says, thanks for the really informative session. I really appreciate that last part about learning outside the box, which is really good. Just before we finish, I asked that last time to Pat, but I forgot to retain it. What will be a question that you would like the next person to answer about leadership? Question that you may have on leadership.
how do you build a healthy culture for your organization? And I'm asking this because this is a work in progress for me.
Okay, I will ask this question. I forgot the question from Pat, but I will ask you maybe later. Where people can find you? I will share your link in the comments, but where people can find you. I know you said also you're writing, you have your own newsletter, 35 issues already. Congrats on that. 35 weeks, almost like more than 6 months. So which is quite amazing. So where people can find it, tell us everything. I will share our links for our media channel.
35, almost as old as me. So that's something. So I'm very easy to find everywhere. I'm Cax Uson on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. My blog is caxuson.com, my newsletter, I mean. And yeah, I mean, go Google, and I'm probably the only result that will come up as well.
I will put everything in the comments for people that are reviewing it after, and also I will put your recommendation for books, movies in there, so that will be cool also for people that want to watch it. Dax, thanks a lot. It was an amazing session. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the questions that we received on social media. I was quite impressed. Couldn't go through my question. We had too many questions coming from outside, so that's a good thing. Thank you, and see you soon for the episode 3. And thank you for coming for the second episode. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, and thanks so much, Phil. This was so fun. Like I said, I really enjoyed getting a soapbox. So thank you for giving me one.
You're welcome.
Bye.